This is the HX Collective Relationships channel, where we explore the complexities of human connection in all aspects of relationships with key stakeholders. Today's thought provoking conversation features Andrea Mac as she shares authentic relationship stories that have transformed her human experience. The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. So, Andrea, we talked a lot about the value of looking at human flourishing in the context of work, and particularly how that translates into building that capacity, particularly for women, when it comes to selling as economic empowerment. Let's talk about a second lens of the HX Collective, which is human flourishing in relationships. Now, it's a pretty broad category because if you look at every aspect, a lot of our relationships live in the workplace. But as you think about relationships sort of writ large, why is it so critical that we're putting a focus and attention on elevating the human experience when we look at how we connect and how we build relationships with others?
Deb, I have to be really honest that this is a harder perspective for me to have and a harder conversation for me. For me, the human flourishing in work is a really clear path and connection, and I'm able to see it in all ways. And when I start thinking about the role that human flourishing has in relationships, it becomes more challenging for me to put into words what that means in my own life and what that means in terms of how we relate to others. And I think that being considered, I think because it's vulnerable, right? And it's really critical. That means it's so important. It's actually probably more important than work. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with why we're here on Earth. So if you'll indulge me a moment to tell you a story. Last year, I went down this path of increasing my happiness and increasing my connection. And I thought, if people knew what made them happy, why wouldn't they just do more of it? And I was like, yeah, like that's so smart, so smart. Like just figure out what makes me happy and do more of it. And then I started to think like, well, wait a minute, what makes me happy? Is it taking my kids to the park? No, not really. If I'm being like really honest, no, I hate the park. I hate sitting on the bench and pushing them on the swings and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, is it career success? Yeah, like maybe, but temporarily like that. And when I started thinking about where I was most happiest or where I had these moments of delight or where I really felt like my true self, there were a couple of like through lines I could connect. And some of them were around gathering. So gathering and connecting had nothing to do with networking or, being front and center. It had a lot to do with true connection and meaningful gathering and, a couple of other things. So I spent the year really thinking through how I was going to create more of those experiences to elevate not only my human flourishing, but also for those around me and in an effort to become somewhat happier as an individual. And so I also did a bunch of research on what happiness can be distilled down to. And happiness in life actually can be traced back to two things, according to like research and philosophers, things like that. And it's your personal relationships and it's your ability to grow. And so when I think about meaningful connections or gathering, whether it's with my children or my husband or a new friend or even a stranger on the train, it really is about this feeling connected, even if that relationship is temporary or momentary. And it's really about providing some form of growth for myself or others. And so when I think about human flourishing in relationships, it really is centered on that. Like, am I growing? Am I helping other people grow? Are they contributing to my growth? Are we growing together? Are we trying new things? And so for me, the relationships really feel like a conduit to connectedness, to being seen, and to growth. That's really how I think of it.
Well, you take your research and often find ways to operationalize it. And I think it would be great, particularly for takeaway value to anyone who's listening, about some of the gatherings and the experiences that you've curated in the last year. So, if you would indulge us a bit and just share some of the different ways you've created these authentic reason for people to come together. Very often, people who didn't have any prior context or connection. I think these would be some good takeaway nuggets for people who are listening.
Absolutely. I mean, so again, it's easier for me to talk about the professional side of things. My company, Prequel, out of Chicago, offers a series of what we call field trips, like getting out of your house and just doing fun stuff with other people who have a shared interest. And research tells us that in order to make meaningful adult friendships, there has to be a shared value or interest, a certain frequency or cadence to connecting, and then the opportunity to really share. And so we created these field trips that are just around doing fun things with people who are also interested in fun things. So we went to a lipstick making class, we did a dance class, we did a book exchange where you brought a book and you got to pick one. We did a clothes swap. We did and it all actually kicked off with what we had, which is called a gathering lab dinner. So there is a company, a client of ours out of Birmingham, Alabama, who really wanted to tackle this problem of connectedness. And in a post-pandemic world, in a hybrid work environment where church and family no longer have the same role, Janet King of the Gathering Lab created a proprietary methodology to increase your likelihood to make friends. So we kicked off the field trip series with a big gathering lab dinner in which 65 people came, were assigned labs, and created friendships. So I think those are some of the things that I've done on a professional side. Now I will, because it is vulnerable and I want to be like really honest about my own journey with human flourishing. I had this moment after having a successful year of events and creating connections and gathering and doing fun things at its core. I had this moment where I thought, why am I doing this with professional friends? Why am I not doing this with my kids? Why am I not doing this with my spouse? Why am I not doing this with my closest friends? And so for me in particular, where work feels like such a natural place for me to thrive and tends to be my go-to, I actually am working really hard in this year on replicating that in my home life. I'm replicating that in what I would consider to be my most important relationships and relationships I want to grow in, or relationships that are near and dear to me. So it's a challenge, which I suspect is why this whole relationship conversation is a bit of a challenge for me, is because I have to work really hard on what I'm successful at in the world and bringing it back into my own home life.
Yeah. You are straddling, as you said earlier, with your four kiddos. You've got Gen Z and you've got Gen Alpha both at the house. You're at the end of the alphabet and at the beginning of the alphabet. And, we've often talked a lot about research about how our generation is really the last native analog generation. And now we are parenting these digital kids whose worldview are being informed by things that didn't even exist when we were their age. And so when you think about this nation of human flourishing, particularly in relationships as parents, is there any perspective or priority that you are anchoring, building on what you just shared, that might be useful for somebody who may be considering, I've got Gen Z kids in college or high schoolers, or I've got littles who are in grade school and really thinking about prioritization of effort and engagement in that arena. Anything you have to share?
Oh, yeah. So, because I do have the fortune of having kids in all different stages of parenting, and um, I've had quite a journey because, like most families, each of our kids are different and require different needs and have different perspectives and interests. I will tell you there are a couple of key learnings I have by being an experienced mom and by being, a mom with younger kids. And I would say one is that I give myself the grace to not have to do it all perfectly or do it all huge or do it all big. Like, not everything has to be a field trip series. Not everything has to be a curated front row concert tickets. Like, I have learned to say that if it's 10 minutes here or it's talking on a drive somewhere, I'm carving out smaller, more meaningful moments that one give relieve the pressure of me having to do it all and do it big and be present and be everywhere. I found that that has been a shift. And I can tell you, I mean, my 15-year-old boy, he's a teenage boy, a quintessential teenage boy, like one word answers, never gives me information unless I pry. Even then, it's hard to get. I'll tell you the biggest place that I've seen our relationship evolve is he signed up for a summer golf camp, 3 days a week, 6 a.m. So 6 a.m., 3 days a week in the summer, I was driving him and one other kid to a golf camp. And that was some of the best time that I had with him because he would talk to me on the way there. He would tell me what was going on. We had captive time. Now that's not a surprise. I know that experience. Moms talk about that. Go for a walk, sit in a car, do something together. But I think the most important takeaway for me was it doesn't have to be a big road trip to Boston with just me and him. It can be a 10-minute drive at 6 a.m. where I give him a granola bar. So I think one, it's like think in terms of bite sized instead of big. Now, as I mentioned earlier, like I'm actually not a good little kid mom. I aim for pretty much average across the board. And I'm not a good little kid mom because I don't like to play. I'm not really into playing. I'll do the coloring, I'll do the art, I'll do the building, but I don't like to play. And what I have had to like retrain myself with is to say yes more often. So when the little kids say, after a long day, can you come play Legos with me? I'll be like completely candid. Often I'm like, no, I can't. I have to do the grocery list. I don't like Legos. But I have found myself saying yes more often and it really contributing to what my relationship is like with my kids. So saying yes first, like I look for a reason to say yes first, which is harder when it gets to the teenage years, much harder. But I found myself doing that. And I think my other last sort of like evolution of how I'm cultivating this relationship with kids at different ages is that I have been very, very, very intentional about telling my kids at least once a day that I love them. So I've gotten into the habit of either every morning or every night texting the college kid, texting the high school kid who leaves early, and telling the littles. So I've had to work hard because I mean, this is going to sound terrible on a podcast, but that doesn't come natural for me. It doesn't come natural for me. Like I'm in business mode most of the time. So I've made a really, really clear effort to say I love you once a day and to try to give a hug every single day that I can. And I'm not wired like that. So I've had to like work really hard on that because everyone has different love languages and the physicality and the words are creating a certain connectedness back to our home and back to our family. So when they're watching endless amounts of TikTok or they're comparing themselves on Instagram or they're lost in a YouTube channel, I feel that I have created a safe place for them to anchor, that this is our reality, that they are loved, that they are appreciated. And even if I get a one-word response, I feel that I'm reinforcing those messages in the background. So again, a long answer, but based on each of the kids, those would be like the three things that I've done really hard to create a connection back home versus in this digital cyber world of disconnection. So I've like used my words differently, carved out micro moments, created hugs, and like taken in bite sizes.
First of all, it's a huge inspiration. And I think it would be hard pressed for anybody to have a sense of shame when we're not naturally wired for something. It's what we do with that not natural wiring, which I think is so inspiring. And what I'm seeing is a through line of intention. It's like we can be good at anything that we choose to be good at doing. We can organize ourselves even when we don't have the emotion to feel like doing something. We still have a capacity to choose anyway because we're attaching to something that's much bigger than our comfort. It's much bigger than our fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of inspiration in what you're describing. And frankly, I'm hoping that people who are listening to this, you know, people who are not parents to children, but have that same opportunity to really think about friendships or siblings or neighbors. I think relationally, a lot of those things really apply. Those micro moments in how you engage with your neighbor, how you reach out to uh, a former high school friend. They're same principles I think apply, notwithstanding being parents that give you at least a access point and a sense of urgency, if I might add. One of my favorite things, my eldest now, so it's 2025 when we're recording this, and my eldest just turned 21. And I have to say to all the people who are listening who are pretty much convinced that their teenagers are going to be lost forever and all that, they'll be back. They'll be back when you're convinced it's not going to happen. I can tell you confidently, I had many moments of that. And you are probably most close to that of all the people I know. But what's so amazing is once their brains start to really grow and mature, I am shocked at how much micro moments are the things that my 21-year-old said that was the difference maker.
Mm.
That through line, that consistency. So even when I wasn't getting anything in return,
Mhm.
there was human flourishing being cultivated. And I think there's a sense of just suspend your disbelief and have faith that if you continue to choose the right intention, relationships can flourish. Any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, you and I have talked about this before, and I think it's a common, maybe sort of theory or science based on that. What people really want is to feel seen and heard, right? Like we want to feel seen, like we matter, like someone is listening, like someone is watching out for us, like whatever construct that is, we want to feel seen. And I think about this thing that I read on the World Wide Web that it says something like pay attention to when your kids are telling you something small. Like it might seem like it doesn't matter, but it all does. And I think about that a lot. Like when my kindergartner is telling me about, a Minecraft game thing that I could care less about, paying attention to those little things signal that I respect him, that I care about him, that he is safe to come to me with things. And what I've seen is that that is the same application that works with your neighbor, with your friend, with your business colleague, with your spouse. Like when someone is choosing to share something with you, whether it's their time or their thoughts or their worries, listen, like hold space. I feel like that is the through line that has made a difference on how I feel to be in a relationship and the mutuality regardless of what side you're on. So I feel like that would be my final thought is like when someone chooses to share something with you, whether it's time or words, like listen, because it might seem like little stuff, but it's all big stuff. It all matters.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.